Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you. And for the past couple of days, we've been speaking to Stacy Gagnon from the Gagnon family, authors of Cowboy Joel and the Wild Wild West. I think we let you know at the end of yesterday that Seth Yoder, who is the illustrator, will also be joining us. And here he is. Good morning, Seth.
Good morning.
Seth, I'm blown away by the illustrations in this book. You've definitely got your own style here. How long have you been interested in art?
Pretty much ever since I can remember. I've always loved drawing of some form. I used to do a lot of, I guess I still do, a lot of pencil drawings. I used to love drawing animals, and I would just doodle all kinds of weird stuff. And I've always loved art. Were
there some books that you enjoyed as a child that maybe inspired what techniques you would use? Because I'm telling you, as I look at this, you know what I'm reminded of is the Polar Express, which I think are some of the most beautiful illustrations in a child's book ever. But these really remind me of that kind of look. They almost look painted. You know what I mean? You've got such richness and depth in the colors.
Gotcha.
I guess my question is, were you inspired by other illustrations as a little boy? Or any books that you liked better than others?
So I can't think of any that directly influenced this style. I do remember reading books like the Berenstain Bears and Dr. Seuss and, a lot of those classics. But this has kind of been my own style, I think, that I've just developed through years of messing around.
Any formal training?
No, not in. Well, okay, I've taken some small class stuff, but not in drawing really in particular or art. So yeah, I'm all self-taught.
That is remarkable. That's really remarkable as I look through this.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Again, we're talking about Cowboy Joel and the Wild Wild West. Your first go-round with a book, or do you have some other books that you've illustrated out there?
No, this is my first one ever. So
how did you meet up with JPV Press?
So my dad owns a country bulk food store, and I had done some ad work and graphic design for the family business, and we had worked with Marlon with Plain Target Marketing and JPV Press somewhat before, and so that's how I knew Marlon, and that's how I initially got into JPV Press. It's pretty much, I didn't know Photoshop or much of that software before I started with Plain Target Marketing, and so I had to pretty much learn Photoshop in a month and scramble through all that to get into ad design, and you probably don't want to see some of my first stuff. So that's how it goes.
Yes, yep. That's how everybody does that. But my goodness, you're talking about marketing and graphic design, and then you're talking about children's book illustrations. You're talking about two completely different things. How did you get from one to the other?
Well, through JPV Press.
But that was interesting to you as well? You thought, I'd love to try it.
It was, because I had always loved pretty much anything involving the arts, art. And so, and along with that comes music and acting, anything that involves that. I always have interest in that type of thing. And so when they said, hey, we have a kid's book that you could illustrate for, I was like, that sounds really fun. So and here it is. And
one thing that's very, very different, and what I love about JPV Press is they don't act like other publishing companies. Other publishing companies, the writer of the story and the illustrator of the story don't have any communication among each other. And that's, for some reason, the way they do it. But you got an opportunity to talk to the Gagnons. They could even give you some ideas, and you kind of collaborated a little bit with them. Tell me a little bit about that, how that worked.
So that was great. I love the way that JPV Press does that. They work hand in hand with the authors, and I think that also gives a lot of peace of mind to the authors as well, knowing that the people working on their project are hearing what, are getting the information that the author wants them to get. And so, yeah, it's very helpful for me as an illustrator. I was able to, I talked to Stacy over the phone several times, and we got a feel for it. It was a little bit slow getting off, just, back and forth, kind of feeling out what she wanted in the book and stuff like that. And then once I got the style down that she liked, then it was kind of, then the ball started rolling well.
She had a funny story where she said to you, "You're going to need to throw away your ruler." And you said,
"Oh, yeah." So I was drawing like the buildings, and this was in like the first one or two spreads. I was drawing the buildings and the rafters and everything that shows up in the book. I was using rulers for like the walls and stuff, the straight line stuff that would normally be straight in real life. And that took away some of the organic quality of the illustration, and it made it look a little bit more computer generated. And she was like, "No, it needs to look crooked. It needs to look run down and tattered." And so I took the ruler away, and that definitely helped with the, so when I drew all the wood slats in some of the illustrations on some of the spreads, those were not with rulers. So they may look, for the most part, straight, but, they're more, the edges are a little more ragged, and it helps. And so, yeah, that was funny, because when I told her that I was using a ruler, she was like, "Oh, throw that thing away."
And you said, "I can't, because it belongs to JPV Press."
Right, that's
integrity. But, oh my, you've got a gift. I mean, it's just amazing. It is absolutely beautiful. Now, to go from one person's idea in their head and then what it's actually going to look like on paper has got to be two completely different things. So there would be what's in Stacy's head and in each of the children working together, collaborating with her on this book, and then communicating that to you, and then going into what that looks like in your head, and then what that comes out of your hand. Take us through that whole transition.
So, again, with the way JPV Press does it, we're able to communicate a lot with each other as far as illustrator and author goes. And it's just really a matter of the more you communicate, the closer you'll get to each other's ideas. So it's, and the more you just feel it out, it's not really a magical process. It's just a gritty, nose to the grindstone. Okay, this didn't work. Let's go for something else. And I think when you have two people working on the same project, it also opens up a lot of new perspective and ideas for that project, because now you don't just, because if she would have also illustrated for it, it would have only been her ideas and her perspective. And so she wrote the book, and I illustrated. Now there's two different perspectives being portrayed in the book, which I think is just a really cool thing.
That really rounds it out. Were there any surprises, though, as you're working with her, that you came up with something and she said, "My goodness, I wouldn't have thought of that"? Then there it is. That's how it affected you.
I think some of the silliness in the animals, and just certain things I would draw. She said, "Oh, I like that there." And so, yeah, and then you would have those little aha moments and be like, "Okay, she likes that." So, and that's just the type of thing that happens when you're working through something like this, where there's two different ideas. The more you have moments like that, the more you're able to have moments like that, the easier it is for everybody.
Blackbeard. How did you look at a lot of real bearded dragons, or something in your mind said this is how he ought to look?
So I should mention one thing. The very first illustrating that was done for this book was by another guy from college, I'm not sure where, that Stacy had somehow connected with him. He started on it, and he felt like it would be a little bit overwhelming for him, and so long story short, the illustration was shifted to JPV Press, where I would do that. And so he had already started some of the characters. He had already given Cowboy Joel and Blackbeard. And so those characters are very similar to what he had come up with initially. So those, in that way, it's not completely 100% original with me. But so I had those characters. Right. And so Blackbeard did initially have a massive beard that was always showing, and then we figured out, okay, Stacy doesn't actually like that because it looks weird on the lizard, and so I was like, all right, take that away, and just
give him a shave.
Yep, give him a clean shave.
I would love to see so much. It's very fun, I think, to watch how we did it behind the scenes kind of things for animated movies and so forth. And so often you see pictures from the very beginning that don't look anything like how the characters look by the time it really is produced. Did you have the same situation? Do you go back and look at some of your early reject pictures that you've done?
Oh yeah. So I as soon as I found out that I was going to be illustrating Cowboy Joel, I started sketching his face and doing small stuff like that, sketching Blackbeard's face, getting used to the characters, and they look, there's similarities obviously, but they look quite different from what it is in the book. And that's another thing with, the more you go through different possibilities with the same project, the more you get a feel for it, and so each rendition that you finish will be better than the last. And so really the more concept art you do, the better the finished product will be, and the longer you do it, the more you do it, the more it will differ from the very first sketch.
Yes, and goodness, think of have you seen early pictures of Mickey Mouse, for example?
I believe so, yeah.
And it doesn't look anything like Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, and even throughout the life of the cartoon itself, of the show, and the life of Mickey Mouse, he changed. Even his finished product changed over the years, and it's just what happens.
So did each of these characters then become easier and easier to draw every time you drew them?
Yeah, because you started to realize the nuances in proportions and just all that, how the expressions, and you're like, once you've drawn it 50 times, you might as well have drawn it 100 times, and it's it's it ends up being the same thing. And that's one thing too, working for so long on a project, you start to get unfresh eyes. Your perspective starts to change a little bit because you spent so much time around the project.
So that leads to my next question. You got to feel like you knew these characters. Tell me about that. How did that relationship that you had with each of these characters that you were drawing, how did that grow?
So right at first, when I was drawing Cowboy Joel, I wanted to show his face in the first couple spreads just because, introduce the main character. And Stacy did not want it showed until some of the later spreads, just because Joel's real personality is he likes to hide from people, and he's more shy, and so at first I was like, oh, I really want to show his face in the beginning, and the more I went through the story and worked on the illustrations and really, began to grasp what the story was about, and that, Joel is being bullied here. He doesn't want to show his face. And this book, in more ways than just the story and the surface illustration, reflects Joel's feelings in the way that, El Matón, or the bully in Spanish, El Matón makes fun of Joel in the book here, and taunts him and tells him to get out of town and all that, and Joel doesn't want to. I wouldn't want to show my face, so yeah, in that way, relationally, it reflects Joel's real personality. So in some ways, I feel like I know Joel, though he doesn't know me at all.
Well, it's very interesting talking to Seth Yoder. He is the illustrator for Cowboy Joel and the Wild Wild West. We're going to be back talking with Seth a little bit more after these words. You're listening to Our Community.